General elections 2014. Man, what a repudiation of Obama's policies. But what does it mean for Washington State? What happened with the elections? My name is Scott Roberts. I'm the Citizen Action Network Director with the Freedom Foundation. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan think and action tank based in Olympia, Washington. I'm here with my colleague, Glenn Morgan, the Synod High Master of Political Messaging, as we call him. And I thought what we would do today is just have a roundtable discussion, the insider's analysis of what happened with the elections. Why don't you listen in while Glenn and I discuss the politics here in Washington and what the changing landscape looks like. So, all right, Glenn, let's kick it off. I guess the big money came in the Senate in Washington State.
It did. This was one of those years when millions of dollars flowed into our state elections out here in Washington State by a variety of interests, including
Tom Steyer out of California.
Tom Steyer, Bloomberg throwing money into our, former mayor of New York throwing money into our gun initiatives. Local unions like the WEA and others, where they just threw millions of dollars, and
what just a nasty political cycle too.
The
money was just used to mudslinging and bash the opponents instead of really trying to get any kind of real message out from the left. It was about trying to discredit the candidates on the right, and I have to tell you, it was a pretty good slate of candidates that were out there. But a lot of money was spent in the Senate, in the 35th Legislative District, which Tim Sheldon was probably one of the main focuses of Tom Steyer's money. The 35th Legislative District, of course, is out in the Shelton, a little bit in the Thurston County, Kitsap County area. Tim Sheldon, a longtime legislator, very well respected in his district. He's a Democrat that crossed over to join the Republicans to create this new coalition caucus, and the Democrats had it out for him.
I mean, going back now a couple of years since the couple Democrats at that time joined, and it changed the makeup of the state House or the state Senate so that it was Republican controlled versus Democrat controlled, which just through amazing political ripple effect in Washington State, they were Sheldon specifically was excommunicated from the party repeatedly, and yet despite that, there was a clear focus. Everybody knew that the control of the state Senate was up for grabs. All this outside money came in from Steyer and everybody else, and the Democrats were going to flip it and take over the state Senate from the Republicans. That was priority number one. And it didn't work out that way.
Had the Democrats or Tom Steyer called me before the elections, I told them not to waste their money in the 35th district. Because
certainly against Sheldon. I mean, he was solid, and it was an amazing amount of attack ads that came out. I mean, phony groups were set up to represent themselves as conservatives, trying to misrepresent what Sheldon stood for. They never registered the PDC. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fines and violations that come out of this, but in the end, it didn't work. Sheldon stuck it out. And a couple of the other Senate seats, like you were mentioning, Andy Hill, who's up in the east side, King County sort of area, that Bellevue, Kirkland area, he was another target. And as a Republican senator, he came through pretty easily, I think, looking at the results so far.
Doug Erickson was clearly in the crosshairs as well.
Doug Erickson, that was another waste of money. I mean, tons of money was thrown at Doug Erickson, I think mainly because Doug Erickson up in Whatcom County, mostly in the district outside of Bellingham up there, he was stood up to Governor Inslee for his cap and trade and carbon tax schemes that Governor Inslee has been promoting recently. And he was out in front. He was very open about the fact that these were bad policies for Washington State. Governor Inslee didn't like that too much. Governor Inslee partially recruited a lot of these funds from Steyer. The two of them were seen meeting together, and that money just disappeared like water in the sand. And Erickson's going to still be the senator from Whatcom County.
Yeah, the other interesting race there was Mark Milosha, a former Democrat legislator who crossed over and became a Republican and ran.
Republican senator, yeah,
in an open seat, and it looks like he sailed away with that as well. So all of the juggling given in the Senate basically ends up where there's still a majority. By hook or by crook, they're going to end up basically with one crossover. They still have a majority coalition. By a couple of votes now. And so it's the Senate is relatively, even though there's a lot of money and a lot of attention spent on the Senate, it's
basically no change.
It's been unchanged. So.
Yeah, basically from last year to this year, you have a few names that changed. You have one more Republican, which was basically the effectiveness of that was just because of the one Democrat went away. You still have one Democrat who's joined with the Republicans, but it's basically the same as it was before the election.
Yeah, last couple of years, right?
But a lot of money got spent.
But there's big changes in the House, and there's still, even as we're recording this, There are 3 seats that are basically toss-ups still right now.
Right, that's right.
But as it looks, there's been a shift of 4 seats to, is that correct?
I would say that's what we're looking at. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the challenges in Washington State, of course, as people know, is that they mail in the ballots, and the ballots still count that are mailed in literally postmarked just a few hours before they announce the first result. So those ballots are still in the mail, or they're being received at the auditor's office. They'll be counted over the next week or so. As we do this broadcast, we've only seen the first round of counting. So at this point in time, it looks like about the Republicans, it looks likely that they're picking up 4 seats in the House.
Okay. So with the toss-ups, if let's say the toss-ups go Republican, which is still, it's uncertain at this point.
Correct.
But it's likely.
Yep.
So if those 3 toss-up seats go Republican, the balance of power will be 48 Republicans and 50 Democrats. So
right.
it's a difference of 2, which makes it likely there could be a power sharing agreement if there's a
right.
Democrat or 2 that cross over. Now you could have a power sharing agreement potentially in the House.
Right.
Let's talk about the 3 races that are toss-ups. They're too close to call yet.
At this point in time, yep.
But you know, they're going to be nail biters. It'll be a few weeks before they're actually probably decided in total. Where do you want to start? 35th?
Yeah, let's start in Mason County and a little bit of Kitsap and Thurston, Sheldon's district. But in the House side, that's where one of these battles was going on right now.
So Dan Griffey, who's now running for his 3rd time.
His 3rd round out there. I'll tell you, this is a dedicated campaigner. 6
Yeah.
years of campaigning to get to this point.
You know, we know Dan
4 years.
really well.
Yeah,
He's a good friend of ours. He's basically from our neck of the woods. He's been running against Kathy Haig.
Yep.
And he's been nipping at her every time.
Real close. I mean, the last couple cycles, 2010 and 12, he was just within, boy, just a very small number of votes both times.
Yeah, and he's there again. It's a couple hundred votes difference.
It is, and it's so close. At this point in time, at the first count, it looks like Kathy Haig, the incumbent, the Democrat incumbent, is leading a little bit, but it is so close that nobody's taking this race for granted. You're going to see both sides out there trying to do ballot rehab and watching the returns as the auditors are announcing their results over the next couple days. It's going to be very close in that race.
Yeah, I think that's a big point with these toss-up races. Is because of our election cycle, they don't have to be in the auditor's office. They just need to be postmarked by the election date.
Right.
And so you have these trailing ballots that come in. And these elections can really drag out. I think it's something that we need to probably work on here in the future to
reform. Because when you have a close race like this, there's nothing worse than have everything build up for election night and then not really knowing what's going to happen for weeks. So, and then fortunately, the 35th is, is one of those races will be like that probably.
But it's a big lesson that I think that Republicans learned in the first race with the Gregoire-Dino Rossi when it was so close. And Rossi and the Republicans really didn't have a ballot rehab team that comes up that goes out and chases ballots.
Back in 2004.
Yeah, back in those days. Mm-hmm. And since then, they've really built up that capability. So
that's right.
I think that's basically in place, and you'll see a lot of this ballot chasing and ballot rehab going on here
on both sides
in these 3 races that we're about to talk about. But the 35th, right. Daniel Griffey, Republican, who's basically running on a property rights kind of platform against Kathy Haig's rural values kind of race.
Yep.
The one in Lakewood. What's the Lakewood?
The 28th legislative district with Paul Wagman.
Paul Wagman, yeah.
Yeah, running that seat. And that was actually an open seat because the legislator in that seat, who was a longtime incumbent, Tammy Green, decided to run for Senate, and she resigned her seat and ran for Senate against Steve O'Bannon and lost. She's done in that race. However, it left an open seat, which Paul Wagman, who is also, like Dan Griffey, has been out there twice before. He's in a nail-biter as well against a Democrat named Kilduff, and the 2 of them are neck and neck. Now, at the first count, it looks like Wagman's ahead, but it's again, we're talking the margin here, just a few hundred votes, so it's very, very close.
Yeah, it's too close to call at this point,
right.
But it's likely, and if Wagman wins, it's a pickup because it was a vacated.
It was a vacated. Yeah, absolutely.
And then out in the 26th, Michelle Caldier against longtime incumbent Larry Sequist.
Right.
And Larry Sequist, this race has become particularly nasty. A lot of, I know there was actually a lawsuit filed and stalking claims.
Photos and there was a lot of stuff that goes on. And listen, these races, political races, have lots of drama, personal drama.
Of course, it all happens in October, right?
Right, yeah, exactly, just as everybody's trying to make the decision on their ballots. But You know, this is out in the Gig Harbor area, so it's kind of a little part of Pierce County, mostly Kitsap County. The whole race is out there. And you have Michelle Calders, a new young Republican challenger.
Yeah, Dennis,
taking on,
small business owner.
Yeah,
right?
small business owner Dennis, who raised a lot of money. She was very effective and has a great personal story. And Sequist has been there a long time. And I'll tell you, this is a battle that, again, that's coming down right to the wire. And she's slightly ahead at this point in time, first count anyway. And so I expect basically the same thing to be going on in that district for the next couple of weeks. People will be running around and making sure that that every ballot's in. When we talk about ballot rehab, too, for the listeners that may not know, we're talking about people who have sent in their ballots and forgot to do things like sign on their ballots, or the signature doesn't look right or something.
Well, there's some confusion over what they might have voted or something.
Yeah, and so the ballot gets kicked out. And it's still considered a valid ballot if they can get either the signature corrected or it put on in the first place. And so there's usually not too many of those, but in a race that's this close, there could be enough that it could make the difference if they get enough of those ballots in that the people happen to be voting for their
But
candidate.
these people like Michelle Calder, who are basically newcomers to the scene,
right.
running against established, long-time incumbents. Yep. The incumbents have such an immense advantage in these races that they have been able to, they've been on the ballot a number of times, the district has voted for them and approved of them, and they've used their public resources to mail into and basically advertise themselves during their time in session. And so they have a real decided advantage. So for a newcomer to come up and challenge like this and actually be able to pick somebody off like this, and there was one in the 25th district, that's the Puyallup area, and that's Melanie Stambaugh.
Yeah, and that's a classic case of, I mean, here's a 24-year-old, I mean, somebody just out of college, basically, who is taken on, and a longtime incumbent, Don Morell. She's been in the legislature for a long time. And to have a 24-year-old win, I mean, now this isn't a close race. This one's done. Melanie Stambaugh is going to be the next representative from Puyallup in the 25th legislative district. Youngest legislator in Olympia this next cycle. Out of the blue. I mean,
the two representatives out of there. So Hans Zeiger is her seatmate.
Former intern at the Freedom Foundation.
Yeah, was one of the youngest people in the legislature as well, in his late 20s. Melanie's in her early 20s. And so when you see a picture of the two of them standing together, you think this is like, Junior America's, league or something, right?
Yeah, or college.
College Republicans.
College reunion, exactly.
These are indeed, they're wise beyond their years, and they're going to make great representatives. I can tell you, Melanie Stambaugh is going to be around for a long time in politics. She's someone to really watch that could potentially even move up into D.C. if she wanted to at some point.
And you've got to be, these are the types of races that are a bit of a shocker, because when some of these people file in the beginning, the incumbents are probably feeling pretty safe because they think, hey, it's a newbie coming out of nowhere taking me on. And most of the time, those don't go too well for the challengers. But in this case, boy, we've had a number of them around.
Any other races in the House that were shocking or surprising? I think we've covered a lot of the high points. But,
well, I think right here in Clark County, the 17th district, where we've got the kind of an epic battle of, boy, I think almost $1 million spent in that race.
Yeah, boy, how could I have forgot about that one? Linda Wilson versus Monica Stonier.
Yeah, and that's like an epic battle of this incumbent, Stonier, who's been in there for a while. Linda Wilson, first time candidate coming out as a Republican, and it looks at this point in time anyway like Linda's taking that race. She's got a much bigger gap, so it does look like she's probably going to win, despite an amazing amount of money spent against her, largely by the teachers union. Over $250,000, according to last public disclosure documents that filings, I should say, that we've seen. And that's just in negative ads.
Yeah, the attack ads, and they were particularly nasty too. It was just, and there was this real rush of nasty attack ads by the Democrats here at the last minute, and it really reminded me, like, they don't have a message, they don't have real policies, they're not going after the other candidates for the positions that they're taking, they're going after them on personal attacks, and it had this feel of they were in panic mode. They didn't have anything else to do. They couldn't figure out any other strategy.
Yeah, and that was a strange thing. I mean, there were some negative campaigns, nothing new to this political cycle or any other, but the level and the strangeness of some of these political attack ads, and the just the nastiness. I think of Mark Milosha. There was an anti-Catholic attack on him, and
they tried to make some kind of weird correlation between he was born in Mississippi, therefore he's truly a radical, crazy guy. But the truth of the matter is, he was born in Mississippi, but he was raised in New York.
Yeah, which might make him radical and crazy. But yeah, no, that was and across the spectrum, you also saw another race where a lot of money was thrown into it up in the 44th, where you had Harmsworth, the Republican, and it was had formerly been a Republican seat. So this Republican candidate Harmsworth is running there, and this fellow named Wilson, who was so we're having another Wilson up here, but who was a teacher in the school district up there.
I remember this.
Yeah, and so what he does is he goes and he gets in trouble because he's trying to use cross-country runners from his school where he teaches and a few other local schools because he's friends with the coaches
canvassers.
Yeah, it's like free labor to go out and lit drop the neighborhoods while they're out running.
Hey, here's your workout for the afternoon. Go drop some literature off.
And I was a cross-country runner. I would have been really annoyed if one of my coaches had come to me and said, "Hey, you got to go drop off this literature while you're running."
Yeah.
And you know what? I think despite all the WA, the teachers union money that came behind him up there, he's clearly Wilson lost, Harmsworth won, and that's the Republicans hold on to that seat that was otherwise open. I would say the only other race out there that would be kind of interesting just to be aware of was the other one in Mark Milos's district, which is the Freeman W race. And that's just, it's one of these odd and kind of tragic stories, really. We had an incumbent Democrat, Freeman, who was formerly a Federal Way City Councilman up there. He'd just been elected, actually, in 2012. Unfortunately, he got cancer. And he must have been very sick. He died during right towards the very end of the election.
During the election, yeah.
Right, he passed away, and but it looks like he got elected despite that. And so Dovey, the Republican who was running against him, ran a pretty aggressive campaign and did well in the primary, but wasn't able at this point in time. It doesn't look like he was able to pull it off at the end. And so we've got a situation where somebody's been elected, but they're no longer alive.
So the Democrats will have to go through a party process and nominate 3 people and then bring one person up to basically make a replacement, right?
Correct, yeah, and so we have no idea who's actually won that seat. I mean, Freeman was on the ballot, but we don't know.
It's been won by a Democrat, but we don't know who's actually going to fill the seat.
We don't know who's going to be there. Yeah, the only thing we know is that they'll probably be crazier than they would otherwise normally be to be elected in that seat. I don't know, a little bit more extreme. That's usually how party politics kind of works behind the scene when they're nominating people.
Okay, well, so it's interesting. So the Senate remains the same, power sharing agreement. There's a possibility, there's these 3 toss-up seats, or these 3 toss-up races, I should say. If they go to Republican, there's a potential there could be a power sharing agreement in the House.
Yep.
So what happens? What does this mean, though? I mean, it's the next steps in the insider of the politics. What's going on?
Well, the thing I think people have to pay attention to is the Republicans are getting together, just like the Democrats do, and both parties get together and they decide who's going to be leadership in their respective parties.
Their reorganization of the caucuses, right?
Now that matters here because depending on who the Republicans, the leadership reorganization probably matters more than it used to, because at this point in time now, it looks like the Republicans they're right there, very close to having a majority in the state legislature. And there's several Democrats that the names have been floated out there for a while, who may be kind of leaning towards jumping ship and at least, if not changing parties, joining with the Republicans in a similar mechanism.
So it basically means, it basically means that in effect, the Republicans could have majority control.
It's possible.
And the question then becomes, does the new leadership, who's going to be reorganized here in this next month, do they decide to just basically play safe and try not to make any waves and hang on to the majority, or do they actually take bold moves and try to move their policies forward in the legislature? So that's the big question.
It is, and the other question that's related to that is, what do the Democrats do? You got 2 parties here. So you've got the Democrats that took a pretty bad beating this cycle, really losing a lot of seats, and a number of seats that they won, they didn't win by much either, so that they used to consider safe. Do they come back and do a different sort of power sharing? Is Frank Chopp, who's currently the Democrat Speaker of the House, has he been doing a good job? He's been losing seats in the House since he's been there. So do the Democrats decide, hey, maybe it's time for new leadership, or do they decide to go and play to a more extreme wing of their party? I mean, who knows? But a lot of this gets decided over the next month or so as they decide, both parties decide who their leadership's going to be.
Yeah, what's the strategies of both parties coming up?
Right.
It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yep.
We're going to be reporting on that as we go along. And I'd invite all the viewers to tune in to thecuv.com or to myfreedomfoundation.com, where we give all kinds of coverage around politics throughout, not just during the elections, but all throughout the year. My name is Scott Roberts, the Citizen Action Network Director, and thank you to thecuv.com for lending us the use of their studios and having us and inviting us to be here. Thanks to my colleague Glenn Morgan for helping me with this roundtable discussion and this wrap-up of the 2014 elections. And until next time, thank you, and we'll see you later.